Certainly, both of you know that American Indians and Alaska Natives have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. So could you tell us what steps you've taken to ensure that your programs are really reaching people in these communities? And Sandra?
I think the first thing our state has done is respect the villages. When they want to shut down and say no one comes in, then we respect that. Due to the pandemic, we say, okay, we will work with the tribal entities and see when when we need to go in and when we don't need to go in. So I think respecting their authority to govern their own, in a sense, their own villages was one of the biggest things that our state did. The other thing is that we developed those relationships with them ahead of time, with the tribal entities, and see what we can do as an agency to help them stay safe from COVID. We are looking at training material that's in languages other than English. We are looking at providing training to village public safety officers about abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We make ourselves available as an agency to go out to the villages when we need to. And then we work with the health aides out there closely to ensure that if they need our services, we're there for them.
We've learned so much from our rural and remote communities during this process as well. And what was important to them was continuing to provide, elders with the best possible quality care during this pandemic. That included, creating things like virtual talking circles and having a way to share across communities with elders. And also intergenerational activities and continuing those activities outside of, safely outside of their long-term care facilities, and what that looked like, and being able to still fish and, doing those important things. And we also talked about, one of the communities shared that music during the pandemic, traditional music, was so very helpful to Alaska Native elders during this time to help them stay engaged and to help them continue to build and strengthen those relationships with the younger generation. So music was one of those ways of enjoying this time together during the pandemic.
And I think that this community, the state of Alaska, the Alaska Native population and the state worked really well together in ensuring that everyone was vaccinated that wanted to be vaccinated. And once the tribal entities were vaccinated, or the Native population were vaccinated, they reached out for those that weren't and offered that vaccination to them. And I think it just goes to show that Alaska's doing a really good job at working together with their tribal entities and making sure that we're inclusive of all populations here.
I know for me personally, I could not have imagined it until I now have a new definition of remote in my head after seeing some of the villages in Alaska. But what have you done to adapt your programs to ensure that those communities are served? Because they're difficult to get to. I mean, when I came back to the lower 48, I was like, there are no roads. The only way in is by
That's
plane,
right.
So
That's right.
What are some of the strategies you've employed?
So I'll go ahead and start. Again, we've learned a lot through this pandemic and the value of virtual communication, right? And so we'll continue to have town hall forums, not on a monthly basis with residents, but maybe on a quarterly basis and during special events.
So Sandra, how have you adapted your programs to ensure that these communities, these small, very remote communities in this huge state are served?
Well, I want to start out by saying we before the pandemic, we built the relationships with these communities. You know, having investigators serve this community consistently, the same investigator, was very helpful. So that when the pandemic hit us or happened, we were already ready. We had these relationships built, these strong bonding relationships. So we were able to communicate to them they were able to communicate to us their needs, and we were able to communicate to them, you know, how we were going to serve them and what we could and couldn't do. We also
Right.
look at designees, which we can use to go out into these communities when we can't reach them. Maybe someone from that community to go out and be the eyes and ears for adult protective services and help start our investigation. So we never changed anything different because the pandemic hit. To serve these communities, we kept doing what we were doing, building strong relationships, talking to them and communicating them, using virtual communication was what we were doing in the beginning before the pandemic with some of these villages because they are far away. And in the
Yes.
wintertime, we're unable to get to them.
Yes.
So we feel like we kind of created virtual communication years ago and
Mhm.
working with these villages. So they didn't see much of a change in our behavior. They see consistency, which is really
Nice.
good as well, for showing them that we are committed to serving their community, no matter if it's a pandemic or not. Our goal is to keep those adults in those communities safe.
You know, to put a special plug in for our volunteers, you know, we reach out across our regions to try to recruit volunteers. And currently we have 62 volunteers. We are just starting to recruit for more volunteers in those regions where we're not able to travel too often. And so we're advertising for volunteers in those remote and rural communities. So we are so happy and thrilled that you know, we have amazing volunteers that we can rely on to continue to build those relationships.